GPR, static distance truth. You are listening to signals from the outpost, field transmissions from the forgotten edges, places we have forgotten, but the signal still finds a way. Today's transmission, Waypoint 113, outer mid-rim. Classification, abandoned. Status, overpopulated. GPR. We don't bring you the news. We bring you what the news forgot.
You're listening to Signals from the Outpost, Episode 4, Stellar Waypoint 113. This is not a guidebook. It is not an official survey or a neat series of observations kept at a safe distance. What follows is a raw account of my time inside Stellar Waypoint, what I saw, what I heard, and at times, what I became a part of. The lines between witness and participant blurred more often than I intended. There were moments when curiosity turned into something else, when the urge to understand gave way to choices I cannot quite justify with a byline. In a place like Stellar Waypoint, it's easy to forget you came to observe. It's easy to lose the separation between you and everything around you. This report isn't complete. It's not objective. It's simply honest. And sometimes, that's the best you can offer. Stellar Waypoint 113 has been on my list as a reporter to visit for a long time. So, once given the opportunity, I took it. They say people who stop here either don't know better or have nowhere else to go. I suppose that made me the latter. Stellar Waypoint 113 was once a refueling post. Temporary, functional, forgettable. But what happens to places when they outlive their purpose? Here they become cities, labyrinths, nightmares. You don't arrive at Stellar Waypoint. You descend, past broken satellite rings and rusted antenna fields whispering in static, past the outer shells of wrecked haulers, their names long since peeled away with the paint. The docking bays wheeze like tired lungs, and the automated greeting still plays, though the voice now, stretched by time and neglect, sounds warped.
Welcome to Waypoint 113, your gateway to the stars.
No one laughs at the irony anymore. Inside, the corridors twist like intestines. No maps, no logic. Just endless arteries, pulsing with rust, low light, and the stink of old oil. The walls are scabbed over with layers of cables, repatched insulation, and graffiti in half a dozen dialects, most of which I didn't recognize. At every turn, something forgotten stared back. A prayer etched in soot reads, "Don't let her go dark," smudged beneath a crust of ash. A faded photo taped to a bulkhead, corners curled, eyes staring out from a past that no longer exists. A child's toy melted into a ventilation grate, its plastic smile deformed by heat. It stops you cold. Shocks you, really. Kids live here. Grow up in it. Each fragment, a ghost story. And the ghosts aren't just metaphors. They're memories embedded in the walls like rust beneath paint. Impossible to scrub clean. Most residents live in converted cargo pods. Standard issue freight units, long since gutted and re-engineered into homes, welded into the walls of the station like an exoskeleton. They're stacked in layers, rows, little colonies of steel boxes with ladderways and reinforced catwalks strung between them. Inside, it's tight. You get a folding bed, a wall-mounted cooking unit, a combined wash basin and vacuum toilet, and maybe a small cabinet if you're lucky. Some pods have patched insulation and ambient lighting. A few even run smart temp control and air filters. Hand-me-down tech from better days. I stayed in one on my second night. The paneling buzzed when the heating strip kicked on, and the whole pod tilted slightly toward the outer bulkhead, like it had been installed in a hurry. But it was clean, it was sealed, and it was quiet enough to hear yourself think. I did not ask how it had come empty. Around here, vacancies were not common, and the reasons behind them were even less comforting. All I knew was I paid a hefty price for the privilege, a stack of credits that could have rented a suite back on the core worlds. A few nights of uneasy sleep, but still sleep, a door that locked, and a little patch of space to call my own, even if just for a while. On Stellar Waypoint, that counts for something. Some residents decorate. One pod I passed had hand-painted stars and moons on the inside wall, faint and smudged, but hopeful. Others hang woven cloth, old photos, or projected synthetic skylines on the ceiling. Faded memories played on loop. These pods aren't luxurious, they're not even comfortable by most standards. But they work, they're yours. And on Stellar Waypoint 113, that puts you in the minority. For every one person who lives in a pod like this, there are 20 scraping by in hollowed-out conduits, forgotten storage bays, or open dorm blocks where privacy is a curtain, and a toothbrush is considered property. I met a father raising 3 kids in a power converter chamber, said the heat from the coolant pipes kept them from freezing at night, said they'd applied for a pod 5 years ago. So yeah, the pod crowd? They're the lucky ones. After arriving, nobody paid me much attention when I crossed into the district. A few glanced up, then looked right past me. Most didn't bother to look at all. Conversations carried on without pause. Transactions shifted hands without a word. If anyone cared who I was, or what I was doing there, they hit it well. In a place like this, strangers come and go all the time. Nobody wastes the energy to wonder why. It took time, a few quiet exchanges, a few moments of shared silence. Little by little, the wall shifted. Not enough to feel welcome, but enough to start seeing the stories hidden in plain sight. The barber in a pressure locker. Near Sector 7, I found a man giving haircuts inside a converted pressure locker. The space was tight, barely wide enough for a chair, a battered tool kit, and a strip of polished metal nailed to the wall to serve as a mirror. The walls still bore the faded warnings from when the locker had been part of the station's original life support system. Now it smelled faintly of machine oil, old soap, and the thick recycled air that pressed in from all sides. A few people waited along the corridor outside, sitting quietly on upturned crates. Their heads low, their voices even lower. No one seemed in a hurry. Here, a haircut was as much about the time as it was the trim. At first I hesitated. The chair sat squarely in the center of the locker, beneath a single harsh overhead light. I sat down anyway, trying to push the unease aside. It wasn't the chair or the room that bothered me. It was the blade, the straight razor he kept tucked carefully in a worn leather belt. When he pulled it free to scrape the stubble from my jaw, I found myself watching every movement, acutely aware of the edge gliding just inches from my throat. It was hard not to think about the old garbage chutes buried deep in the station, the ones that still led out into space. Most were broken, forgotten, but a few were still connected to the original airlocks. A man could disappear that way, quick and clean. One sharp cut, one unmarked hatch, and you'd be nothing but another piece of drifting debris, swallowed by the black. It happened sometimes, or so the story said. But the barber had an easy way about him. No questions, no sales pitch, just a nod, and the soft scrape of scissors against worn leather gloves. As he worked, he talked about old ships, busted marriages, the weight of silence in a place where the sun never rises. He said the silence was the hardest thing, and that giving haircuts kept him tethered to something real. You cut a man's hair right, he forgets the noise for a while, he said, trimming the edge of my sideburns with a steady hand. When I asked how long he'd been here, he just smiled faintly and said, "Long enough to know the locks stick, and the air scrubbers lie." He talked about the old days, when the station still had rules, when garbage chutes were cleaned monthly, when the red light district was just a rumor. Now, he said, everything grows wild. Even the bad parts. And somewhere between the hum of the clippers and the quiet rhythm of his voice, my unease faded. When he finished, he wiped the blade clean, offered a nod, and moved on to the next man without ceremony. I paid him in food rations, 2 sealed packets of nutrient paste, and stepped back into the corridor, feeling strangely lighter. Not just on my feet, but somewhere deeper I could not quite name. Reclaim Bay, Sector 8 Beta. The Reclaim Bay is where people dump what they can't fix. It's also where others go to find what they need. Broken consoles, cracked helmets, obsolete tech, maybe a half-useful AI core, if you're lucky. I saw a teenager digging through a pile of old drone limbs. He found one that twitched when he tapped the joint. His whole face lit up. That's what passes for luck out here. Those were just some of the many small encounters I would have in the days ahead, each one offering a glimpse into a world most people never saw in full. And then there was the red light district, the part of the station that had lingered in my mind since the day I arrived. I had been putting off visiting it for days. Every conversation, every casual warning, every sideways glance seemed to push it a little further down my list. It carried a reputation that was difficult to ignore, part cautionary tale, part inevitable rite of passage for anyone passing through. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment. But the truth was simpler. I hesitated, not from fear exactly, but from something quieter, something closer to unease. The stories I heard didn't paint a clear picture. Some spoke of the district with a kind of amused fondness. Others, with a grimace they tried not to explain. Still, a reporter's work is built on understanding the places others might only pass through. After another evening of restless quiet inside the tilted pod, I decided it was time to see it for myself. Whatever waited beyond that border, I knew it was a part of the station's story, and part of mine now, too. The Red Light District, Sector 9 Kappa. And then you reach Sector 9 Kappa, the Red Light District. It hums like a dying neon god. Holographic dancers loop on cracked projectors. The air is thick with synthetic pheromones and recycled heat. Strip clubs squat like hungry mouths along the corridor. Some shuttered, others wide open, leaking music and moans. But it's a front. All of it. Behind those mirrored doors and twitching lights is a tunnel system. Narrow, hot, lined with false walls. You step through velvet and end up somewhere else entirely. Gambling dens, black clinics, meat markets, and things with no name. Everything's wired, everything's watched. And through it all you hear laughter. Drunken, broken, or desperate. Hard to tell. Maybe all three. The red light district pulses with color. But not life. Neon bleeds down the wet alleyways, illuminating faces painted in hope, or painted to hide it. The signs flash in 100 languages, most of them lies. I met Lyra in the red light district. I don't remember exactly how. I think I was following a sign, one of those flickering hollow panels that promised oxygen-rich rooms and synthetic intimacy. But somewhere between the promise and the rot, I heard a voice say,
"You look like someone who's about to make a mistake."
I knew what Lyra was the moment she leaned in. No pretense. Just that practiced intimacy. The kind that isn't free. But she was striking in a way that felt unreal in a place like this. Like someone cut from a better world and thrown into this one. A girl with looks like hers doesn't last long down here without drawing attention. And sooner or later, attention starts calling itself opportunity. And of course, I was drawn to her like a moth to a light. Maybe it was the way she looked at you. Like she'd already seen the worst and didn't flinch. And at that moment, I just didn't care. I met her leaning against a support beam, probably older than the station's registry records. Smoke curled from her vape stick, like incense from a shrine. She didn't flinch when my eyes met hers, just held my gaze with those electric eyes. Blue-white. Humming faintly. Her outfit shimmered in the half-light. That signature fabric they call second skin, translucent and slick with embedded neon circuits that moved across her body like a living schematic. It hugged her like memory. Tight, unforgiving. Her face was war-painted in sharp eyeliner. A triangular scar beneath her left eye. Whether it was a gang mark, a biometric code, or just fashion. I didn't ask.
You lost?
She said as more statement than question. Her voice was warm metal, tarnished brass. I told her I was a reporter.
That's worse.
She became my translator. Of language, yes, but mostly of danger. Lyra told me the layout like it was folklore. You can't trust the walls in the red light district. Behind the mirror shows and synth choreographed dancers, behind the illusion of temptation and glittering escape, there are doors with no labels, stairs that go down instead of up, tunnels that don't appear on any schematic. The strip clubs are facades, glistening skins for rotting bones. Once you're inside, the real business begins. Secret passageways built into false wall panels. Branching tunnels carved over decades of expansion, desperation, and silence. They twist beneath the city like arteries, feeding something much worse. Gambling halls carved into old maintenance shafts. Drug dens lined in glowing foam and padded despair. Auction blocks, with clients who never show their faces. The clubs exist to funnel the hopeful into the hopeless. Graffiti marks the edges of territory. Neon tags in way talk and dead languages, some glowing, some etched deep like warnings. Animated ads shimmer along corridor walls, women with chrome eyes selling oxygen highs, children laughing over blood-red pills named Bliss Phase. A sticker peels behind it, revealing a scrawled warning. You forgot something here. Lyra was more than a guide. She was the key to the locked places. She knew every tunnel, every bypass, every face worth avoiding. And for one wild night, she let me see her city through her eyes. The tour. She took me beneath the surface, literally. We dropped through a club hatch into narrow maintenance tunnels, thick with humidity and static. We passed secret game dens, a crimson-lit auction floor, a place called the Sink, where synthetic drugs flowed like air. We drank mushroom-spiked gin poured from a repurposed coolant bottle. She handed me a synth tab with a smile sharp enough to cut plastic. I took it, against better judgment. Hell, maybe because of it.
This kills the weak parts of you.
We laughed like people not allowed to. She dared me to race her down a supply pipe.
I dare you.
I lost. She stole a kiss from me in a room full of forgotten surveillance bots. We ended the night breathless under a hissing neon ad that just read, "Feel nothing, remember everything." We ran down sloped corridors, laughing like we were children again. She kissed me behind a severed security node and dared me to race her up a drainage pipe. I lost, gladly. The noodle stand. She led me to a noodle vendor tucked between two leaking ducts, buried deep in a corridor that never saw silence. Just the hum of machinery and the occasional hiss of pressure valves. Time didn't pass here, it leaked. Like everything else. The stall wasn't much, just a cracked counter wedged between rusted pipes and a grease-stained tarp. But the smell was something holy. ginger, garlic, something vaguely synthetic but warm. The old man behind the stand didn't speak, didn't look up, just handed her 2 bowls, like it was written somewhere that we'd show up. We ate crouched on a stool made of pipes, our backs to one of the only wide corridors in most of the station, steam curling between us like ghosts. Water dripped steadily from above, tapping our shoulders in time with the corridor lights stuttering overhead. They flickered like a dying star, trying to decide if it should give up. The pipes overhead hung low. Conversation wasn't necessary. The slurp of noodles, the hiss of nearby vents, the distant shout of someone too far gone. That was the music of the place. It wasn't just food. It was ritual. People came here when they needed to feel something solid in their hands, something warm in their chest. In a place like Stellar Waypoint, where everything's stolen or sold, a bowl of noodles could feel like grace. Her apartment. Lyra then led me to her place 4 stories up. On a scaffold platform accessible only by a ladder that flexed when you stepped on it. The walls were scrap paneling and privacy film. Inside, it smelled faintly of copper and burnt spice. Holographic posters made a faint glow of light. In the corner on a metallic shelf, a withered plant in a ceramic skull. We were still riding the edge of whatever we took. Time blurred, so did my judgment. Without warning, or a care, Lyra peeled off the second skin like she was shedding her station identity. Beneath, her body was unexpected, flawless, in defiance of her environment. Tight curves, unmarred muscle, not a bruise or scratch in sight.
Body mods. A girl's best friend in this place.
She stepped into a dark part of the room, took off the rest of her outfit, and then she stepped into the flickering glow from her broken wall lamp, revealing her body. And without the second skin, I could see the luring etched tattoos. Tiny script, glowing circuitry, spiraling glyphs. Not art, but schematics. Upgrades etched into flesh.
This city's a machine. I just made myself a part of it,
she said, tapping the spot above her hip where subdermal lines pulsed like code. I sat frozen, somewhere between awe and confusion.
You don't fight Waypoint. You outlive it, or it digests you.
Then she walked to the bed and smiled.
Now, let me show you what this place is really about.
I blinked, caught off guard. Lyra, I'm a reporter. I couldn't pay for. She threw her head back and laughed like she hadn't in years.
This is free, you idiot. I like you.
That's where the recording cuts. Some files don't survive the trip out. Some stories you carry in silence. I never saw Lyra again, but sometimes, when it's quiet, I can still hear her laugh, echoing through the city's wires. I left her in that narrow alley the next day. Same posture, same wall, same eyes. Only this time, she didn't say anything. Just watched me leave like she already knew how the story would end. Closing the report, extraction and departure. My last days on Stellar Waypoint blurred together, spent in the same cramped corridors and flickering lit passageways where I had first arrived. By then, the city no longer felt foreign. It felt heavy, familiar in ways I had not expected, and could not fully explain. Getting word back to my editors was harder than I had planned. Communications here don't work the way they do in cleaner places. Every message passes through hands, and every hand expects something in return. I kept the message simple, ready for extraction, ready to come home. Even then, I wasn't sure if anyone would hear it. Leaving Stellar Waypoint was harder than anything I had faced while living inside it. Personal communications were useless. Somewhere deep inside the station's original architecture, radiation fields and decades of jury-rigged tech had turned the local airwaves into a permanent storm of static. Some said it was the old research reactors bleeding interference. Others said it was deliberate, a kind of invisible net to keep messages trapped inside. Whatever the reason, if you wanted your voice heard beyond the station, you had to buy your way onto the hard lines. The few surviving comm relays stitched together by smugglers, syndicates, and men who charged by the second. I spent 2 days negotiating for 5 minutes of broadcast time. It took a string of middlemen, each one greasier than the last, and a pile of favors I could not easily replace. Every hand along the way wanted something. Credits, rations, information. Some wanted promises I had no intention of keeping. By the time my message reached open space, it had been carried through 10 different dirty hands, and every one of them had taken a piece of me with it. The people I dealt with were a study in survival. There was the woman running the dead comm booth near Dock 12, her left hand mangled into a claw by some old industrial accident. She keyed in transmission codes with 2 fingers and quoted prices without blinking.
I see here it's actually going to cost
Her voice
you
flat
100
and
units.
cracked like old paper. Every minute I hesitated, the price doubled. There was the dock official with eyes so clouded from old surgeries, he could barely read the screen in front of him. He wore a clean shirt over a body that smelled like rust and cheap whiskey, and he stamped papers with a mechanical punch, whose ink had long since run dry. When I asked if my authorization was valid, he only smiled, with half a mouth of teeth, and slid a fresh fee schedule across the counter. There was the boy no older than 16 who offered, for the right price, to escort my documents through the faster channels. His face was clean, but his boots were stained with something black and sticky, and when I handed him the credits, he disappeared into a side corridor without a word. I never saw him again. At each step, the city seemed to lean in closer, breathing down my neck with a kind of hungry patience. Every delay, every missing form, every second of static on the line felt intentional. A reminder that nothing here came free, not even your way out. Ren Doss, freight hauler. I wasn't the only one stranded in the gears. Somewhere between Dock 7R and the lower sleep bays, past shuttered intake offices and cargo cranes frozen mid-lift, I met a man named Ren Doss, freight hauler, solo license. He told me he came in clean, with his papers in order and a tight route out to the Helian Verge. Just 3 days, he said. That was over a year ago.
It started smooth. Refuel, minor coil tuning, even had a diagnostics tech lined up to clean the sensor mesh. Everything was getting done like it was supposed to. Felt like a real station. Efficient. Then came the delays, their verifications, the extra forms. My hauler got flagged for a structural recert. Then my cargo license expired mid-process. Then they said my registry was under internal review. One snag after another, like a rope tightened. I swear to you, they knew. They wanted me to wander into the city, burn credits, get tangled. Because once you're deep enough in, they've already got what they want. Your vessel, your gear, your time. You become just another piece of salvage they can bleed dry. I was foolish enough to fall for it. Thought I was smarter. Thought I could handle a few hoops. But this place doesn't break you all at once. It leaks you empty. Quiet. Until all you're doing is surviving the next delay.
What's left of his ship, the Anthem Rise, sits docked 2 sectors down. Gutted. Half covered in reclaim tags. He still visits it now and then, just to remember that he arrived here with purpose. He looked at me and gave me a final declaration.
If you make it out, give the stars my regards. Tell them I'm not angry, just late.
If I make it out, I will. I'll get word to the stars. About Ren, about all of them, and about what the city really does to the ones who stay too long. Departure from Stellar Waypoint was not a matter of booking a flight. It was a labyrinth of paperwork, permissions, docking codes, cargo declarations, and passenger certifications, most of them outdated, contradictory, or impossible to verify. Every form meant another line, another fee, another man behind a cracked desk with a dead terminal, and a hand open for a bribe. When I first arrived, no one had cared enough to ask my name. There had been no customs, no inspections, no questions. But leaving was different. Leaving meant money. And on Stellar Waypoint, money means survival. Every office, every checkpoint, every forgotten hallway became another toll gate, another reason to be stopped, delayed, or forgotten altogether. The men and women I dealt with didn't hide what they were. Grease-stained shirts, missing teeth, sweat running in rivulets down sunken faces, people who had lived too long in a city that stripped the shine off everything. They didn't smile. They didn't threaten. They simply told me the cost and watched without blinking until I paid it. In the end, it took most of what I had left to buy my way onto a freighter bound for the outer lanes. Even then, there were no guarantees. Paperwork could vanish. Ships could disappear. People did all the time. All I could do was pay, sign wait, and hope the engines fired before anyone changed their mind. Sitting in the freighter's cargo hold, wedged between battered crates and machinery spattered with old grease, I thought about everything I had handed over just to reach this point. And somewhere between the creaking of the hull and the low hum of the freighter's engines, I realized the truth. I had probably never needed any of it. No paperwork, no clearances, no permissions. None of the men and women who took my credits had actually moved anything forward. They were just the first hands to catch an outsider desperate enough to believe there were rules here. Stellar Waypoint does not run on order. It runs on the illusion of it, held together by opportunists and scavengers who know exactly how long to let you wait before offering a way out. Through a small, scratched porthole, I watched the city shrink into the black. No banners, no parting waves, just a broken sprawl of steel and flickering lights, already folding itself back into the void. I did not feel relief. I felt something heavier, something I still have not quite been able to name. I came to Stellar Waypoint with a reporter's holopad and a list of questions. I left with fewer answers, a few too many debts, and a weight I have not quite been able to put down. Some places stay with you longer than you stay with them. This was one of them. From the outer edges of a city that was never meant to last, this is Lys Ander. You've been listening to Signals from the Outpost, Episode 4, Stellar Waypoint 113.
GPR. You've been listening to Signals from the Outpost, a field report from the edges of forgotten space. This transmission was brought to you by the Galactic Press Relay. Static, distance, truth. To hear more unredacted reports from the Fringe, subscribe to GPR wherever your signal still reaches. Until next time, may your signal stay strong, your steps stay steady, and your story reach the stars. GPR. We don't bring you the news. We bring you what the news forgot.